Hey folks, it's Rob here with another Ask Rob Anything. And this is where you as an annual member of my community can ask me anything that you like and see if you can stump the guru. And I'm going to do my level best to try and answer the questions for you. Now, today we've got Paul Hanssen. Paul is an annual member. And Paul, mate, firstly, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what is your problem?
Thanks, Rob. So my name's Paul. I'm a civil engineer, mainly working on large-scale subdivisions and other civil road projects. My question is, for blocks sloping away from the road, what drainage options are available?
Okay, so thank you, mate. That's greatly appreciated. So as a civil engineer, you said you deal with large solutions. So there's things that you do on a large scale and things that you do on a small scale. So given that most of our audience is on the small scale, I'm going to concentrate most of it there. And then I'll kind of go into the solutions you probably already know on the large scale side of things, okay? So firstly, we've all heard the common thing that we want the property to slope towards the road, okay? The reason for that is because the services located inside the road network are a much cheaper, easier solution for council to service, for us to service, and they're very easy to get to. But many, many times, like you've said, the property will slope backwards. And so that can be a problem. But for every problem, there's also, I guess, the potential for an opportunity. Now, there's actually hidden within this, there's actually two problems. So problem number one is how do we deal with stormwater? Problem number two is how do we actually deal with sewerage? So I'm going to try and teach that, I guess, talk to them very, very slightly different, okay? So problem number one, stormwater, okay? Now, there's a couple of different types of ways that we can actually solve that. So gravity is by far the best solution. So if we can get a gravity solution out, that means going through the rear neighbour, then that is the best solution by far because gravity is always going to work for us. And so that will be the best outcome. Problem is that we have neighbours who don't really want us to dig up their yard. Okay, so we need to go and beg the neighbour for access and permission in order to do that. And my favorite way of actually doing that is taking a bottle of red, a bottle of white, going in and saying, hi, I'm your new neighbour. How do we actually make sure that one of these bottles is empty before the conversation is finished? And what we're trying to do there is we're trying to identify, firstly, we want to get to know them. We don't just go in and go, hey, I'd like to dig up your yard, because that seems quite confrontational. We want to get to know them, understand their circumstances, and understand any issues or pain points that they might actually have in the property. So for example, if it's sloping towards them, chances are every time it rains, their backyard fills up with water. So if we can kind of tease that out of them in the conversation, then we might be able to offer a solution to them to say, hey, I'm actually looking at doing some extra work in the property anyway, because I've noticed that there was some flooding in the backyard. Would you be okay if I solve that solution permanently? It'd mean I'd have to dig something through your yard. Now, if you do that, you solve their problem, chances are you're going to get away with that for just the cost of building the pipework through and the bottle of red and bottle of white. If, however, you can't identify a problem, you can't identify anything, and you need to, I guess, convince them to do that, then you may have to be forced to fork out a little bit of cash, okay? Now, a little bit of cash can vary massively. And so what I'm going to say is, how profitable is the deal? And then how much can you afford to pay them in order to make sure that you still have enough retained profit in the deal to actually make that worthwhile? I've seen that from as little as $1,000 all the way through to as much as $50,000 and $80,000 in order to negotiate that, because the profitability of the deal was big enough to actually justify it. Now, clearly, we want to negotiate that down as low as humanly possible. Now, the challenge will become, depending upon which jurisdiction that you're in, that council may mandate that there's an easement placed over that solution. Okay, so if that easement is there, that is one of the justifications for why the price point would be higher up, because that easement then limits the property forever. That property now becomes less developable because they can't build on where that easement is. Now, a better negotiation tactic, if you can, is to see whether or not they are actually interested in selling the property. Because if they're interested in selling the property, then you are putting a stormwater solution through their property, plus that's going to solve their site being able to be subdivided at the same time as well, right? So you're actually going to pick up two birds with one stone and they don't even realize. So you're halving the costs of the second development. So look for those opportunities wherever humanly possible. Now that's the perfect solution, is just getting gravity fed. If you can't get gravity fed, then you walk through the rear neighbour, you need to look at gravity fed back to the street. The problem is that you are behind, so lower. So what we need to do is lift up the rear of the property, which typically means that we're going to have retaining walls on the rear boundary and also on the side boundaries, so that we can actually lift that up high enough to then push the solution back to the street. Okay. Challenge there will be, well, how much is the slope towards the rear? So if you've got a 2 meter fall towards the rear, that's now a 2 meter high retaining wall. And that might breach a whole bunch of council rules with regards to, hey, people don't want to have a 2 meter high retaining wall plus a 2 meter high fence on top, because now they're looking at this great big wall on their back fence. So it's not a good aesthetic look. It's also not a cost-effective solution doing things like that. So we want to try and minimize that as much as possible. Look for sites that have only got a small amount of fall towards the rear. Now, I touched on before, I guess, the sewer solution. Both of those solutions will also solve sewer. Okay, so we can, if we're already digging up for stormwater through the rear neighbour, we can also potentially punch our sewer, I guess, through their property at the same time. If we're pushing towards the road, I guess up the top, we can equally push towards the road for the sewer as well. So both of those are plausible outcomes in that regard. The next thing is, what if we can't get gravity? Now we start to look at really creative solutions. The challenge here starts to become, what kind of development strategy are we actually doing? Okay, so because if you can't use gravity, we have to use a mechanical solution like a pump. And if we're using a mechanical solution like a pump, that pump is going to have ongoing maintenance, and eventually that mechanical solution is going to fail. So council cares about who is going to be maintaining that mechanical solution. So if it's an individual house or a land subdivision, council are not very keen on a mechanical solution being there, because at some point in the future, they can't guarantee that if that fails, that somebody is firstly going to be doing ongoing maintenance to it. And secondly, are they going to be, I guess, having cash in the bank when it actually breaks on the day, and can they solve the problem? If, however, you're doing townhouses or apartments, now, in this instance, council are a little bit more receptive typically. And the reason for that is there's a body corporate that sits in place. The body corporate has a sinking fund. They have maintenance schedules. They do all these sorts of things to, I guess, make sure that it is actually repaired. And, you know, there's all the silt is taken out of the pump and all those sorts of things on a regular basis. So council are confident that should it break down, firstly, it's going to be maintained. And secondly, if it breaks down, that there's going to be money to fix it. So depending upon what you're doing, now you've touched on the fact that you're doing land subdivisions, so that solution is probably not available to you. Okay. Now, next solution would be potentially what they call, and this one is very subjective to which council and which jurisdiction. You might have what they call a detention basin. Now, a detention basin is really intended to I guess, capture the water when it comes on rush. Okay, so when the rain is actually happening, it actually, everything hits hard surfaces like roofs, goes into this detention basin, and then slowly we can trickle feed that back into the network in some way, shape or form. Now that could be through what they call a charged line. So there's, you know, I guess the head, the weight of the water will actually push the water back to the street. That potentially could work, depending upon how much water and how big the fall is and that sort of thing. Another solution might be what they call a rubble pit, which is the water goes into, I guess, a network of mesh and gravel and a whole bunch of other things, and it absorbs in there and it slowly dissipates into the earth over a long period of time. So that's also a potential solution. But there's, I guess, with regards to the detention basin side of things, there's lots of really good creative solutions. So you can get the tanks that actually go into the slab, so you don't actually see them anywhere. You can get tanks that actually, I guess, be built into retaining walls, so the retaining wall actually becomes the detention basin. So there's a whole bunch of really creative ways of actually holding those tanks in ways that don't make it, I guess, unattractive. You can put them in bladders underneath the house if your house is slightly elevated, all sorts of solutions like that. And you can put the tanks also under driveways in townhouses and apartment complexes and things like that. So lots of ways of actually doing it. As you get bigger, right? So for those small projects, council care about those, I guess, trying to keep away from mechanical solutions. As your projects get bigger and bigger and bigger, then council starts to change their mind a little bit and go, okay, you know, when we look at the countryside, we've got hills, we've got valleys, we've got all sorts of things, and we're going to have mechanical solutions, I guess, logistically, otherwise we just can't service the area. So then council start to say, well, if we're going to have mechanical solutions, then we need to have them to a particular standard. Then we're going to hand that asset over to council, because council are going to maintain that forever. So we start to turn away from, you know, if it's one lot that we're creating, or one or two, council, so no, we don't want mechanical. But when we're creating 50 or 100, councils go, okay, we're happy to look at that again, because now we can actually build that to scale. Okay. Now, mechanical solutions for sewerage. I'm going to swear here. You've heard the expression, you can't push shit uphill. The answer is you actually can. What you need to do is you need to use a device called a macerator. What a macerator does is it churns, I guess, the sewerage into a slurry. That slurry is then pumpable. And so, I guess, again, mechanical solutions for small land subdivisions they don't really want, but for larger ones, they will actually take on. So all of those are really the way to actually do that. So there is one other solution which is crazy, but it does work. So trust me on this one. If the property is sloping backwards, and you're trying to get a solution out here, but you might find that your sewage or stormwater might be halfway up. Sometimes, and I say sometimes, if the pipe is deep enough underground, whilst it looks like you're going downhill, because it's deep enough, it might actually go downhill underneath you. Now that is crazy, but it does work. I know, I've done it. So when you're doing your investigations, don't automatically exclude it. You actually need to actually do the effort. You dial before you digs, and then do surveys to say, well, where are my solutions? How deep are they? How big are the pipes? That sort of thing. So hopefully that's enough, mate. Did that give you plenty to go with? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, it did. Like, really good solution for the small scale developments that I'm looking at.
Very good. Okay. Well, if you are a member of an annual member of our community, and you would like to try and stump the guru and ask Rob anything, then click on the links below, submit your question, and we're going to see what we can do to help you to progress your property journey. Otherwise, can't wait to see you at one of our Sunday sessions, or hopefully one of our meetups that are held all the way around the country. So till then, folks, bye for now.
Thanks, Rob.